record us. Good evening. Today is Tuesday, January 15th, 2025. My name is Fred Chase, and I'll call to order this meeting of the Rules and Procedures Committee of the Bridgewater Town Council. From our agenda, I note that we still are observing COVID protocols. I'll forego the reading of the COVID statement, but nonetheless, we all realize that it is published upon the meeting agenda. With the meeting open, I note for the record that Councilors Paul Murphy and Brad McKinnon are each present. So we have the full complement of members of the committee ready to act tonight. There are several items on our agenda, but our first item, I would call for approval of the meeting minutes from our meeting of December 12th, 2024. I would entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. And Deb, if you would conduct a roll for us.
Paul McKinnon,
Yes.
Councilor Murphy,
Yes.
and Councilor Chase.
Yes.
3 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you very much. And that was item B. So item C on our agenda is public comment. So I'll invite members of the public who may be present to make their presence known. Raise your hand or put a message in the chat feature so that we can recognize you. The meeting, of course, is being recorded for future broadcast. We ask that you limit your remarks to not more than 3 minutes, and we appreciate the input that you're here to provide. So is there someone who would care to offer comment? I don't see anyone.
Fred, I'd like to speak. This is Tina.
Yes, Tina, right. Go right ahead,
Yeah.
please.
So I am here to answer any questions or concerns that anyone has for the second things that you guys are going to be discussing. So I don't want to necessarily say anything at this point, but I am here to answer questions.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you, Tina. We appreciate that. I'm glad that you are here to do that. Is there anyone else to offer public comment?
Hi, Fred. It's Mary McGrath. I'm here about the POW MIA flag.
Oh, okay. Hi, Mary. Good. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Are there any remarks that you want to offer right now?
The veterans and the residents and the family members of prison of war and missing action soldiers, they've been waiting for like 2 months for this ordinance to be released. So they're hoping that tonight it'll be released to go and voted to be sent to the town council. It's important to them, to know that they have not forgotten, even the veterans, that we don't forget their comrades. And I have a family member who's a POW, so I know how they feel. So that's why I'm hoping it will pass.
Okay, I thank you. Any further public comment? It doesn't appear to be so. All right, I will close the public comment period then. We can move to legislation. First item is, in fact, the proposed amendment to our flag ordinance. And let me just refer to it properly. So the proposed ordinance is DFY 25-010, proposed amendment to Chapter 157, Article 2, Section 1. And as the committee members are aware, we've discussed this previously, both here in committee and, of course, in the full council. And what this amendment would do is, frankly, just one thing. It would require, it would exactly that, require the raising of the POW flag, POW MIA flag at all times, together with the American flag being flown as it presently is in front of the Academy building. as I think the council committee members will remember, we did discuss this matter at our last meeting, I believe, or perhaps at our December meeting it was. And at that time, we made note of the fact that there is currently before the council, which is now passed, an order directing that the town manager conduct a study as to the costs and location preferences, I'll say, as to the placement of additional flagpoles on the property of the before the Academy building. And at our last town council meeting, that order was in fact passed. Naturally, we've not received any word as of this point from the town manager as to her findings in that regard, and I suspect she's going to need some time to do that. But let me just ask for general comments on this matter at this point from the committee members.
You can go first, Paul. I saw you unmute just like when I did.
I have a suggested amendment, Brad. So if you would just like to talk generally, by all means, feel free to go first. But I have a suggested amendment too that I'd like to add.
Yeah, no, you can do that. I didn't have many problems. I mean, last meeting I was the one saying maybe we should just drop this, but then I realized we probably should just keep this going too, no matter what happens with the other flags. So feel free to continue, Paul.
Yeah, my suggestion was going to be in reference to what you, Councilor Chase, just ended your comments by with the order that was passed directing the town manager to look at alternatives to perhaps an additional flagpole or more. I would suggest striking number 4 on this ordinance, which states during any period of display, a flag approved for public display in any manner, in the manner permitted hereby, shall be flown beneath the flag of the United States in POW. I would only be concerned that if another flagpole were erected, this would seem to be irrelevant, I guess, in that case. So
Okay.
I'm not sure it's necessary or needed on there. And I think would be confusing if we did get to the point where we had 2 flagpoles and this ordinance says that it must be flown beneath those flags, when in fact it would be flown on a separate flagpole.
Okay, I see your point, and here's where I agree. I guess here's where I agree and where I disagree. But I look at it this way: I support what this legislation would do, which is to fly the POW MIA flag. And as we know, that flag is, as we speak, being flown in front of the Academy building. So the effect of this proposed ordinance is already in action. Nonetheless, I still say that this should be part of the ordinance. In that sense, I agree with you. My only concern, and it's the same concern that I voiced in December, is the fact that since we now know that the order that you've just referred to has in fact passed the council, we know that it is increasingly likely that 1 or more additional flagpoles will be erected. And at that time, it will be necessary to do a more thorough revamping of the existing flag raising ordinance to provide for these multiple flagpoles. So really, that is the reason for which I, in December, and again, would suggest that it may be something best kept continued until such time as we can make more thorough amendments to the flag raising ordinance based upon whatever happens with the flag order that's now in the town manager's hands. That's my recommendation because, well, for 2 reasons. One, the effect of this is already visible in front of our building. It's already flying. Nobody's taking it down. And the fact that there are going to be a number of inconsistencies when the additional flagpole or flagpoles are erected that will necessitate the more thorough revamping of the flag raising ordinance. And I think it's only more confusing if we were to advance changes at this stage without knowing what kinds of changes are going to come, maybe pick a number, maybe in another month, who knows? So that's why I would recommend us continuing this until such time as we, know really what the status is. I absolutely favor it, and I have a suspicion that we all do. I think that we have had sufficient public input over the past few months to substantiate the necessity of flying the POW MIA flag. So I think it's all something we readily acknowledge. And frankly, my hat's off to Mary and to Mark for bringing it forward as successfully as they have. And I think it's very good that it's been done. So are there any other comments questions?
Well, Councilor Chase, the only thing I would say on that comment is if we do strike number 4 on this ordinance, then when we do have to realign our flag raising ordinance, which is a separate ordinance, we agree, than this one, we would not have to then update this ordinance and a separate one. It would just eliminate any reference to any other flags on this particular ordinance that we're looking at this evening.
Okay. All right. So how about this? So just to make sure that I understand what you're suggesting. So if we were to delete that numbered paragraph 4, which of course refers to number 4 in the flag raising ordinance,
Right.
then the proposed ordinance just reads ordered that the town council assemble votes to amend chapter 157, article 2, section 1, quote unquote, flag raising as follows. So what would be the following text?
I suppose we would strike that as well too then.
Okay, well then we just have 3 preambles, and preambles aren't the text of an ordinance. See, that's the problem we have. If we take out that 4, we effectively have no ordinance. See, that's part of the problem. I hadn't considered that option, but as I can see now, what would we say? I think out of that, to me, I just think it goes. I think it furthers the argument of waiting until we know what we're dealing with. Any other comment? Brad, you got any thoughts on that part of it?
No, I'm just looking at it all right now, trying to think of something that could also be added, but like you just said, it is kind of tricky.
Mr. Chase, may I speak?
I'd make a motion to
that's
suspend the
Mary?
rules.
Is that Mary?
Yes.
Mary, let me just ask councilors, is that something?
I'd make a motion to suspend the rules to allow Mary McGrath to speak.
Okay. All right, I would second that.
Thank
I
you.
suppose we should just do that in the form of a vote, just to formalize it. So if we could have a vote on just, even though it's not a committee rule, it's a council rule, but that's okay. Let's have a vote on suspension of the rule. Deb, can you help us out with that?
Councilor Murphy,
Yes.
Councilor McKinnon,
Yes.
and Councilor Chase.
Yes.
3 in favor, 0 opposed.
Oh, thank you. Mary, please go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chase. I understand that we're gonna have to make amendments to other ordinance or orders when we do the flagpoles. But the one that I'm putting forth has nothing to do with any of the flagpoles or anything else. It just has to do with that one flagpole that the POW will go underneath. Yes, it's up, but I mean, I started this because the POW flag hadn't been up in I don't know how long until I got on the council and realized it. So like you said, it will require the town to keep it underneath the American flag, and we're following federal, I know it's not federal property, but we usually follow the federal protocol for flags. So that's why I was wondering if we could just isolate this. And that way, when we go to mend the other ones, you'll be mending the other flags.
Mhm.
And then you'll be have to adding the Commonwealth flag. So this way you won't have to deal with the POW MI flag because that one's already set. So I'm only amending on the very bottom to add it and nothing else. So we're gonna have to change other stuff when we get 3 flags.
Okay, well,
All right.
all right, why don't we try to, I mean, it's a very brief sentence. Why don't we try to wordsmith it right now?
Okay,
All right, so the trouble is, well, okay,
Councilor Chase, if I could just suggest too, I think the first paragraph, whereas in accordance with the federal law, that to me seems like what should be the order here.
Well,
Correct?
okay, two things.
Yeah,
One, and Mary kind of alluded to this, the reference to that federal law is inapplicable to anything but federal property,
I agree with
right?
that. Yes.
All
Yep.
right, but here's the second point. Since a whereas, since that's a preamble, it's not really part of the law. It's just telling the story, setting the stage, okay? So because of that, I wasn't about to, raise an issue over the fact that, hey, wait a minute, that's federal law. We don't have to observe that. So, the bottom line is this proposed ordinance is to amend an existing, it's really an amendment to an existing ordinance. So for us to say anything in place of this paragraph 4, and I was about to try to think of a way that we could just say, very simply, at all times that the American flag is being flown on town property, at the Academy building, it shall be accompanied by the POW MIA flag. But the bottom line is, that's still amending the ordinance that ultimately has to be amended when we know what we're doing as far as flagpoles. I think, I don't know that because of the way this is structured, in other words, as an amendment to that other law, if instead this had just been proposed as an ordinance unto itself, standalone, the town shall fly that flag together with the American flag, on town property, whatever the words are going to say, as a standalone ordinance unrelated to the flag raising ordinance, we could deal with that tonight. I think no matter what we would try to do with this language, if anything tonight, it obviously has to be as an amendment to the existing flag raising ordinance. And then we get back into the quandary of, well, for all we know, in a matter of, a few weeks or a month or something like that, maybe we're going to be looking at a much more exhaustive, revamping of the ordinance. I just don't want to do things twice. I mean, and not just because it's double the work, but just because it's just all that more confusing. I mean, we already have, in the short span of a few months, a history of, okay, an amendment to the existing ordinance. We had an order to the town manager. We had a resolution. We had a resolution to raise the flag for National POW MIA Recognition Day. I think I'm even missing one. We've had a tremendous amount of attention paid to this, and rightfully so. But it is confusing. And if we have to amend the ordinance now and amend it again more substantially in a month, it's just adding to the confusion, I think. And again, I just make the point, and you know, my hat's off to Mary, but I make the point that the flag is now flying, right? The purpose of this proposed amendment has been accomplished, and we want to memorialize it. We want to see it reflected in the ordinance, but it's either has to be in a standalone ordinance, or let's just wait until we know what we're doing as far as flagpoles. I don't know. Anyone else? Thoughts one way or the other?
I'm still looking at it, trying to think of an amendment that would work, but I really can't. I mean, I get
Yeah,
what you're
see-
saying with the whole weight, so you don't have to do double the work, but at the same time, how much extra work would it be and all that? And
Well,
how
you
long
know,
is it going to take for the flags to even be talked about putting up? I mean, I can personally say the few times I've been there, I've seen them out there measuring and doing all the work around. So they're definitely looking into it. It's not something that's just getting brushed off, which I can say in a positive way, but I really wish this was a little bit simpler.
well, I agree. What I'm just thinking, you know, procedurally, for us to do anything tonight, all that's on our agenda tonight is this. We can't suddenly just introduce a whole new proposed ordinance.
Yeah.
So we only have this one. And, you know, for us to change this one now, depending on whatever we finally decide to say in it, it could be entirely, you know, undone and revamped with different words and different effect when we know what we're doing as far as the actual, you know, infrastructure.
I mean, I'll be honest, I wouldn't be against doing what we did with the energy thing there when we just sent it without really a recommendation, and then we could see what all 9 of us want to do, if we want to continue it down the road, or to just finish it there, amend it there. I'm like I said, I do get where you're coming from when it comes to holding off at the same time, but at the same time, I do get why veterans in town want to see this just passed. Yes, I get that the flag's up and it's been up the whole time, but I don't know. As we know, it's not easy making everyone happy, including ourselves.
Well, right. But in effect, I think we're well on our way to making everyone happy, because the consensus we reached that's embodied in that order that's sitting on the town manager's desk now actually began with the Veterans Council.
Mhm.
And it was picked up by Greg Martin. He and I kind of just put our heads together and decided, okay, the 2 flagpoles. People started asking about 3 flagpoles. And so I amended that. I made it for, you know, 2 or more flagpoles.
Mhm.
So, and that's what passed at the council at our last council meeting. So it, well, okay. So tonight, I mean, I certainly, you know, I don't want to give this a negative recommendation, because the intent of it, I'm very supportive of, as I think we all are. If we return it to the council, you know, I don't want it to make it, well, I certainly don't want a negative inference to be drawn that, you know, oh, they returned it to us without action. Kind of, this is the same situation you referred to, Brad, that we did one before. We didn't want to give it a negative connotation. So I think we were very clear at the time that we returned it without a recommendation, but you know, that's an option we have. In which case, frankly, at the council level, I would make the same argument. Like, you know, we favor this. I think we probably all want the effect of this. We want it to be in an ordinance. It just makes sense for us to wait until, since it's amending the flag ordinance, the flag raising ordinance, makes sense for us to wait until we know what other changes are going to have to be made to the flag raising ordinance and do it all at once.
Yeah.
Seal it up, wrap it up with a bow, and it's done. I don't know. So we could vote as we did a month ago to continue it. It's, you know, I'm willing to consider what, you know, any proposal that either of you have. I know it's a very simple matter, but it's, you know,
It is. Yeah.
we're trying to do the right thing, right? We're trying to acknowledge the fact that, you know, yes, Mary wants to see her and Mark want to see their legislation moved along. We explained a month ago why we
Continue
didn't
that.
vote on it. And not only has, you know, in a sense, nothing changed. Actually, what has changed makes it more realistic that we're going to see 2 or maybe 3 flagpoles. So it's more likely than a month ago that the existing ordinance is going to have to be amended in the future. A month ago, it was just speculation. You know, maybe we can get the town, maybe we can get this order passed through the council. Well, we got it passed. So,
Like I said, I see what you're doing here, so I'll just make a motion to continue this to a future meeting.
okay. Do you have thoughts on that, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the best bet on this particular ordinance as we look at it today.
I mean, I
Yes.
would like to see it go, but that, as Fred says, I mean, it would be less work. It'd be easier for all of us. And I mean, me personally, I wouldn't want to see this happen to my legislation. So I'm sorry, Mary, that I just made this, but motion. But I am going to agree with Fred that maybe we should just put it on hold again.
I would say too, just before we vote on, or I give my vote on the continuation. I think Councilor Chase, your point was well taken. If this were an ordinance that just directed the town to fly the flag at the Academy building under the US flag and not reference anything else,
Anything else?
I think it would be a clear yes. But the fact that it does mention or is written as an amendment to the current policy and does mention other flag raising is what is giving me hesitation. And so I will, with that vote, also to continue this with with that reasoning.
Okay, so there's a motion to continue to a future meeting and a second. I agree that I think it's probably the most prudent thing to do now. Again, we made further progress than we did a month ago toward seeing realized 2 or 3 flagpoles. So I don't think it's such a speculative thing now. I think it's likely the town manager is going to come back to us with what we're looking for, cost estimates, some plan as to placement, things like that, to be put before a vote of the council. That's more likely now than it was a month ago. And so I still think, and all the more strongly feel, that we shouldn't modify the existing law now. But that said, I am absolutely on record. I support this. I support Mark and Mary for having brought it forward. It is going to be incorporated into an ordinance, whether ultimately in this ordinance, or if in fact a standalone ordinance is proposed. I'm happy either way. And again, The flag is flying as we speak. And that is a fact by virtue of the town manager exercising her prerogative to make it fly. And she did that encouraged by the council's recommendation, the council's resolution. So it's not going to change, but yes, we want it embodied in a statute, in an ordinance. So we have a motion and a second, and on the matter of, on the proposal of continuing this to a future meeting in light of all the foregoing discussion. And I'll ask if Debbie, if you could favor us with a roll call vote.
Sure. Counselor Murphy,
Yes.
Counselor McKinnon,
Yes.
and Counselor Chase.
Yes.
3 in favor, 0 opposed.
Okay. All right. I thank you all very much. It's as simple as it seems. It's been difficult for us because we're of two minds. We want it to happen, and we don't want to dissuade the work that's been put forward by Mark and Mary. We want to acknowledge it and let them know that we agree with it. I just think it's more prudent for us to wait until we have all the information that we will need.
Well, I
So-
want to thank you three very much for letting me speak. I gotta go, but I appreciate it and I understand where you're coming from.
Well, thank you, Mary. I appreciate that. It's good work, Mary, and it's absolutely going to be embodied in a ordinance. So I think you should rest assured with that.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll
All right,
see you
thank
guys
you.
Tuesday.
Have a good night. You will
Have
see
a
you
good
then.
night, Mary.
Bye.
All right. So we can move on to, where's my agenda? To ordinance, DFY 25-012, proposed amendment to Part 2, Administrative Code, Chapter 60, Article 1, Section 1, elections. Okay. Now, I think as we all know, this was brought forward by President Perry and our town clerk, Tina Larson, who's with us this evening, has been very supportive of this. And she has made, I think, in my opinion, a good case for adjusting the hours. So let's just recap a bit. What our ordinance says right now, what our town code says, is at annual town elections, polls shall be open at 7 o'clock in the morning and shall remain open until 8 o'clock in the evening. At special town elections, the polls may be open no earlier than 7 o'clock a.m., no later than 12 o'clock noon, and may remain open no later than 8 o'clock in the evening. Now, those are the voting hours that we have been accustomed to for quite a while. Going back over 37 years ago when I lived in another town, those were the same voting hours that I grew up knowing. 7 in the morning till 8 at night. So it really is, for many people, etched in their minds. So one thing we do have to keep in mind is that notwithstanding the wisdom of any proposed change to the hours, there's going to be a degree of confusion and, in some cases, disfavor among the electorate. Some of whom, as we know, who may not be always up to date on town matters, are not going to realize this until election day. They will be displeased if they show up at 7 a.m. and can't vote. But that's not our matter this evening. Now, frankly, we have to break this down, I think, into two discussions: the annual town meeting and any special town meeting. We don't have a lot of special town meetings, but
Elections, Fred, right? Correct?
I'm sorry. Wow. I wasn't even in town government when the town meetings, where did that come from? Town elections, thank you. So we don't have a lot of special town elections, but when we do, obviously, there's a special need for it. And they tend to be significant events. We generally don't have a special election just for the election of let's say, one or more council members or other seats. I mean, sometimes seats remain vacant, or someone, as we just did, fills a seat by an appointment. So it's not often that that's the purpose of the special election, special town election. But what special town elections I have noted, certainly in my tenure on the council and my voting history here in Bridgewater, they're very significant events. So they tend to include things like overrides. For example, the override that vote that was required to approve the financing of the now Mitchell Elementary School. That required an override. Debt exclusion votes. What we need for extraordinary expenditures, that we have to go to the voters to get a debt exclusion approval, right? Ballot measures, ballot questions, including ballot questions that originate sometimes from voters. So, and we've done charter amendments that we've initiated, and they have to go to voters for approval, which could be at a special town election. So they're all very, very significant matters. Now, we realize that town elections, unfortunately, don't draw the great number of the electorate that we would prefer to see. That is just a sad part of our experience. We know that that's true for many towns, is that the low voter turnout, including for very significant issues. Well, I give you this preamble because I have circulated to the committee members tonight, just this afternoon, proposed amendment language, which I am proposing to amend the amendment that is before us. So I realize the members, you have a copy of this. I have to apologize, Tina. I know that you're with us, but you don't have a copy of this, but I'm just going to recite what this basically does. The proposal that's before us would modify the annual town election hours from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. and it would change them to 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. So rather than 13 hours of voting would be reduced to 10 hours. Now, personally, I don't think that poses a great imposition on voters. I don't think that disadvantages a lot of people. Obviously, voters do have the option for mail-in ballots, and I would hope that more people would take advantage of that. So the 3-hour reduction in the morning that's proposed before us, frankly, is not, I think, a terrible thing. I do favor that. I think that Tina has made a case for that, and I think it is a reasonable reduction. I'm less concerned about the expense associated with the extra hours, so there'd be some expense savings there. I'm more concerned about, the impact upon the volunteers. As you know, there's a very reliable, very loyal cadre of people who tend to be older citizens who very generously devote their time to work as poll workers for all of our elections. And I think that, not requiring them to work a 13-hour day, reducing it to 10 hours is reasonable. So personally, I'm inclined to agree with Tina and propose that amendment to the existing ordinance. It would just take 3 hours off of the current voting hour schedule. I have a little more concern with respect to special elections, special town elections. Right now, the ordinance provides also for 13 hours from 7 a.m. until 8 p.m. What has been proposed to us is to reduce it from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. That would reduce the total hours from 13 to only 5 hours. Now, I personally think that's a very drastic reduction in the voting hours. In that case, what I have chosen to propose as an alternative is to reduce the hours from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. In other words, to go from 13 hours to 8 hours. It would take 5 hours off the current working schedule for the staff and the volunteers. I think it's much less potentially burdensome on the public, on the electorate, because I think that given the nature of town elections and the fact that special town elections are seldom, but they're very important matters are on the ballot when we choose to have that. So I think the reduction from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. is more reasonable. One other proposed change I would make to what has been brought before us. What has come before us refers as well as special town elections, also refers to uncontested races. So a race for an elective seat where only one candidate appears on the ballot, who obviously will win that race, even if they simply vote for themselves, right? And I understand that when there's an uncontested race, I think we all like to see a little bit of a contest, but an uncontested race still requires all of those all those volunteers and the staff of the town to do all the same work and to do all the same setup and breakdown and tabulation and all the work that goes with it. But here's my problem. As it's written, what this proposed ordinance says is at special town elections or uncontested races. That's badly written, to be frank, because we don't have town elections and uncontested races. What it means is when a town election includes an uncontested race, okay? But beyond the, you might say, semantics of it, it's actually it requires more scrutiny from us. Because as written, perhaps it would be interpreted to mean as long as any single seat on that ballot is uncontested, then it would fall into this. So in other words, you might have one uncontested council race, but maybe you'd have three, or usually not, but 2 council races, because we have 3 every year. Maybe there'd be 2 that were contested. And on that basis, the voting hours for the entire election are going to be limited. So it would somehow have to be restated to read, to provide that if all of the races for elective seats were to be uncontested. And what's the likelihood of that? Library trustees, town clerk and town council are the only elective offices we have. But the fact is, or school committee, when there's school committee races, but the fact is that we're not going to see an instance, I'm sure, where all of those races are uncontested. So it's badly phrased, it's ambiguous. And I mean, on that basis alone, I can't in good conscience leave that in as it reads. So that's my concern and my proposed amendment. And I for any comments or questions, I'm happy to open it up to Brad and Paul, and and as well, if you folks are willing to hear a response from Tina, who has graciously volunteered to sit here to answer questions for us.
Yes, Mr. Chair, just a few things I want to bring up. So I did talk to a bunch of people about this. More people were worried, if anything, about lowering it, starting later with the annual elections. A lot of people, when it came to special elections and uncontested, which, as you just brought up, is kind of a touchy subject because, as you know, it is kind of rare to see a whole ballot uncontested, but it could happen. I mean, when I ran, I was told I was the first contested for at least a cycle, I think it was, when it came to the council seat. But I am for lowering it. I do understand how we can save the money. And I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of the ballots, but they can help, and they definitely can for the people. Say if we did lower the hours to be able to still get their votes in, even if they work a 9 to 5 on a Saturday, say if that's when the election, you get what I'm trying to say there. But like I said, I'm not against this, but some people definitely thought it was kind of traditional for the 7 a.m. early voters, but like I said, I do see how this could be a good thing, and it's definitely always good to save a little bit money when we can.
Thank you. I can make a comment later if Paul, I don't know if you would like to offer anything.
I think what I would like to reference is I think it's very clear that our annual town election is, according to the admin code, held annually on the Saturday preceding the last Monday of April. For what I could understand, in the last at least 3 special elections that Bridgewater has held, those have also been held on a Saturday, but I see nowhere in the admin code that directs that those have to take place on a weekend. And that's important to me as somebody who works 9 to 5 weekday, to ensure that if we're going to shorten the hours, that it be accessible perhaps on a weekend date where most folks, not all, but most, are available. And so I don't know how we specify that, but I am hung up a little bit on that piece. My concern would be that there was a special town election, which, as you mentioned, Councilor Chase, could involve budgetary related issues, school related issues in some cases that are important, that folks, who are working would not be able to vote on that day between 10 and 3 p.m. And so that would be my concern, again, as written, that I'm a little bit hung up on is, when those special elections are taking place and access to those. And I do support the amendment that you had proposed earlier, to at least stretch out that special town election from 10 to 6 p.m. to make that available. I think 10 to 3 would be too short. I also have a concern, I would say, and this may be a little bit more far-fetched, but something in the back of my mind. When we say uncontested races, I think our government allows for write-in campaigns as well too. And I think that's an important piece of our election that doesn't happen quite often, but as we can imagine, with politics becoming more and more decisive, that we may see more of that in the future. And folks have ran successful write-in elections in the past. And so I think it's maybe uncommon at the moment. It's hard to forecast that in the future of what will be perhaps a successful write-in campaign, and really wouldn't be as described here, an uncontested race. And so that would be another small concern that I'd like to address in some sense as well too.
Um, I think you both raise good points. Frankly, just with respect to Paul, what your comment um, about write-in candidates, I had not considered in thinking about this particular amendment. But I'm inclined to agree because, I mean, obviously, a voter, maybe only when they arrive at the poll, might finally make a decision as to a write-in candidate, to actually take that step. It's something I've never done, and I would be a little apprehensive only because I don't know if I would do it properly such that it would actually be counted. But that's an interesting point, and I think it's valid. In other words, maybe a voter goes to the poll thinking they're going to vote for, candidate A, who's on the ballot, and they just make a last-minute decision that no, they no longer favor A, they never favored B, and they're going to write in someone they prefer, which is their right to do. So that's an interesting additional point, I think, that might favor removing language with respect to so-called uncontested races. And I think Brad, I think your comments are good as well, because I think that on the subject of hours overall, I do think about working people. I spent my career working in Boston and commuting by commuter rail, and so I know that if I were voting at 7 a.m., it means I'm taking, frankly, a later train than my customary train at the time that I was working. And I know that returning home from the end of a workday, I would typically not be arriving back in Bridgewater until 7 p.m. So I know how difficult it is for those of us who do commute. Certainly, I know, Paul, you have a particularly challenging commute. I was at least working, right in downtown Boston. It saved me a little time. But anyway, the point is, I think that making sure we're providing ample opportunities for everyone. Now, we realize that an option will be mail-in voting, which is wonderful. I think not everyone is at home with mail-in voting, and I think that's, in my opinion, partly a result of a certain degree of misinformation that's been circulated over recent years. But I think mail-in balloting, I did request a ballot this year for just in recent days for a mail-in ballot for myself for the town election. I anticipate I'll be there to vote in person. But if barring the unforeseen, but if for some reason I'm not able to, I know that at least I could vote by mail. But not everyone is particularly at home with the idea of mail-in voting. I don't know that they are comfortable with it to the extent that they'd be willing to see a very severe cut in in-person voting hours. That's why in my opinion, I thought it's reasonable to take a few hours off the morning voting for the annual town election, with proper notice being, even at that, given to the citizens. But the proposed cuts to special town elections, I thought was too serious. And I thought, much in line with your thinking, Paul, that a Saturday, and particularly giving until maybe 6 p.m., as I had chosen, was a more reasonable period of voting. And again, the so-called uncontested races, for that to be contemplated, I think at a minimum, it would require a more careful look at the language than we've been provided. And frankly, and giving a credit to your comment, Paul, with respect to write-in votes, I think it's probably inadvisable. And how would it work? You know, if there's one uncontested candidate on the ballot, or do we have to have 2 or 3, or, you know, what happens? You know, if it's 1 or 2 or 3 people and there are 8 people on the ballot, does that mean that, you know, all those other candidates no longer have those regular hours available to them? So it's, I think it's really fraught with issues that maybe hadn't been considered at this point until now. Well, gentlemen, if you feel, if you're comfortable with this, I'm perfectly willing to ask Tina her take on what we've discussed. Okay, Brad, are you okay if we invite Tina to?
Yeah, should I make a motion to suspend the rules?
Why don't we?
Yeah,
So
I'll
that
make a
we,
motion to suspend the rules to let Town Clerk Larson speak.
okay, all
Well,
right.
thank you.
I'll second.
Okay, sorry. Is it all right then for me to
I'll
speak?
second Brad's motion.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
Tina, let us just vote quickly.
Okay.
Get that in.
Okay,
Oh, okay. Are you going to vote?
you're right.
Deb,
Deborah, do you wanna, is Debbie gonna do the vote?
I'm doing it now. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
No.
we're here.
We can't now.
All right, Council Murphy,
Yes.
Council McKinnon,
yes.
and Councilor Chase.
Yes.
Go ahead, Tina.
All right. So uncontested would mean every single race, not just one. So every single race would be uncontested. In other words, people are probably not even going to vote because they know those candidates are going to win. And if somebody is capable of getting a write-in, then they just need to get their people in between 10 and 3. I understand your concern about the special town meeting. If you want to make that one be a separate 10 to 6, that's fine. But I think the general idea would be 10 to 8 for your usual end of April Saturday of spring break, when families are going to have to do absentee or vote by mail, or they won't be able to participate.
So I think what we would need to do, Tina, is with respect to the issue of uncontested, you know, that certainly would need language to be refined.
Right. Just add
I think
all races.
Okay, I don't know if I tried today to think of exactly how I would see that phrase so that it would be unambiguous.
Could
Because
I,
you know,
Oh, sorry,
particularly language with respect to voting has to be, we don't all want to end up in court. Let's put it that way. You know, I don't want to be seen as, you know, attempting to disenfranchise anyone or just inconvenience any voter beyond what is necessary. And so I think additional language is going to have to be drafted to consider that. And I
Fred, would you be more comfortable if the proposal was just to shorten polling hours 10 to 8, no matter what's happening? Whether it's a special election or an uncontested race or whatever, they will always be from 10 to 8.
well, personally,
I would support that. I think that makes sense for consistency purposes.
I do agree. I do think that makes more sense, and it's simpler. It's simpler for folks to, get a handle on.
I mean, that is what Raynham does. And they've never had a contested race in like 20 years. So even though they have that 10 to 3, they've never had to use it because they've never had an uncontested race.
Okay, well, okay, just on your question, your proposal, I would be amenable to an across-the-board provision calling for voting hours from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m., irrespective of the type of election. That was your proposal, I think.
Right. Although Jolie did say to you today that she feels very strongly that if there is no contest, it is extremely difficult for the poll workers to sit there and have nobody come on
Okay,
those uncontested ballots.
so what you're saying, right, in other words, if there's no race that has a contest,
Right.
right, and I kind of fall back on what's the likelihood.
It probably won't happen, but if it did happen, it would be nice to already have in place. We know at least, I'm not sure if it's 4 weeks before the election, that it is going to be uncontested. We have plenty of time to educate the public.
I will say that when I did speak to citizens, as I said before, most of them were in favor for shorter hours for the uncontested. But as we're discussing right now, is how rare is that going to be?
It's probably going to be very rare.
Yeah.
But on the off chance that it does happen, it would be nice for us to have the option to say to the poll workers, we're not going to make you sit here and
Mhm.
stare at each other for 10 hours.
I suppose one could also say in the extreme, if you have an election of entirely uncontested candidates for every seat that's up for election, why hold an election?
It's a formality.
Someone might take that position. Well, that's the extreme position, and I don't think that we'd have no ability to adopt that.
No, especially with write-ins, as we discussed earlier. I know it would be rare for a write-in to win, but even if they were uncontested, there could be someone that says, oh, hey, I'm gonna 2 weeks before the election put up on Facebook and say, hey, write-in campaign for Brad McKinnon as the next town clerk or counselor at large. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
But I just asked a clarifying question, and maybe I'm thinking again too deeply about this. Would this be a special town election including an uncontested race? Or are we talking about uncontested races even if it were on an annual town election? Because I don't think it makes it clear with that. Is that it? Was I clear with that question, I guess?
Okay, I think I think I interpreted that as only related to special town elections because it appears in the sentence with special town elections.
Well, if the special town election is a yes or no, it's obviously contested.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for instance, an override.
Right.
So that's going to be contested. So it's going to be 10 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
But Tina, just in the off chance, I guess, if our annual town election had no contested races on it and no questions in addition, would that qualify for shortened hours?
Yes.
Okay, so it's including. So the language shouldn't be special town election and uncontested races. It should be special town election,
It should
I
be
mean,
at any election.
right?
In other
Any
words.
election.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
any election that is happening that's contested would be, I'm happy with 10 to 8. But it would be nice, per Jolie, to have that clause for the off chance that we have a very uninvolved group of people who don't want to do anything, and we just have enough people to fill every hole. And then our poll workers don't have to sit there and stare at each other.
Okay. So
So
if,
if you want to take that special elections out and put it in for the annual town election and any other special election, because those are going to be ballot questions. They're not going to be candidates.
right,
So those, if you guys truly believe that there's a lot of interest in those and people need a long time to get to the polls rather than doing the mail-in or absentee.
I guess in that respect, my concern is that there could be a special town election, let's say for a ballot question, where we also schedule some odd race.
Okay, then it's no longer a special election. It's just your regular.
No, but if it's happening.
Oh, you're
in-
saying on an off.
If it's happening in the month of January, which it
Yeah.
did a year
For
ago.
me. Yeah, for
um,
me 2 years ago.
It's
Yeah.
still a special election.
All right,
we-
so use the language 10 to 8 then, except for uncontested.
Okay, I'm perfectly happy with 10 to 8 across the board.
Right.
Um,
But Jolie would really appreciate it if you put in there the ability to call an uncontested race ballot across the ballot to be able to have shortened polling hours so that we don't have to keep coming to the council every time. Because the problem with that is it takes too long to get these things to go through, the
mhm.
multiple readings and stuff. So if we found out that, 5 weeks before the election that it's going to be uncontested, we don't have enough time to get the council to vote to shorten the hours. So if it's already written in there, in the off chance, again, like I said, Raynham hasn't had an uncontested race, even though that's in their bylaws. But it is there just in case.
Okay, so if that were rewritten to say, at any annual town election or special town election, for which all
Races are uncontested.
elective offices are uncontested. And hours would be shortened to what?
That would be 10 to 3, right?
Well, see, again, I think we're getting into, it's likely going to be on a Saturday anyway, because we shoot for Saturdays because we feel people are more
Available.
likely to be available.
Mhm.
And the 10 to 3 is very short. That's 5 hours. I would be happy there with the 10 to 6 that I was originally proposing for special town elections. That gives 8 hours of voting. What do you think we should be trying to wordsmith this and get, this part of it done? I mean, I think we've got my sense is we've got general agreement on
10 to 8.
limiting hours 10 to 8. Should we proceed with this?
I think that makes sense. I mean, I think, what Tina's asking for, Jolie's asking for, it sounds like is a very, very rare occasion. And I'm not sure how much time we should spend on those very, very rare occasions. I don't know. I did look just this year, upcoming, Tina, for your reference, the papers are due March 10th, which leaves 6 weeks in between that following Tuesday in the election itself. And I'm not sure what that looks like, if there was a special, order or ordinance that went to the council at that time when we noticed there was only one applicant uncontested.
No phone freeze?
Are you frozen, Paul?
Yeah, my phone just froze too. Zoom at least did.
Oh, I'm back, sorry.
Okay, all right. Okay, well, I mean, I think the simple thing, I think we have less concern right now with the hours because I think we can come to an agreement on the hours. And so as far as uncontested races, shall we just try to get this sentence whipped into shape at this point? I mean,
I'm not against that. Me personally, I will say if it is uncontested, which I know is very rare, I'm not against 10 to 3 or 10 to 4. I don't really think we need 8 hours on an uncontested race. Just being honest. Like I said, I know there are write-ins, but if God forbid someone does want to do a write-in when there are no contested races, they imagine they'd be getting their people in there, or at least writing in on the mail-in ballots, because you can write in on mail-in ballots too, I believe.
Yes, you can do write-ins on mail-in ballots.
Like I said, I'm all for 10 to 8. I get it. Rainham does it. I believe Rockland, I just drove by their town hall. They do it up there too. I think a few other towns I saw in the area have it too. So I'm not against that at all. But I do support Jolie's idea of, say, God forbid, no school races, nothing's contested. Why have the people sit there for longer than 6-7 hours,
okay. So what about at any town election or special town election, for which all elective offices, okay, council, library trustees, whatever, are uncontested. The polls, so I'm trying to make it consistent with the language we're using. The polls shall be open at 10 a.m.
Yeah.
And remain open, how do I phrase this? Remain open until 3 p.m.
I mean, I'm not against 3 if we want to talk hours. Like I said, I'm not against 3. And I mean, in my opinion, I think maybe 6. The extra 3 hours might be a little too much. I'd meet at 5, wherever. Like I said, if it's uncontested, I don't really see the point of all the volunteers sitting
Okay.
there extra hours.
All right, well, since we're going, so in normal circumstances, we're going across the board with 10 to 8. Okay?
Yep.
Any kind of
No
election
problem there.
normally, where it's uncontested, where every seat is uncontested, right? We're going to go for any kind of an election at all. We're going to go with 10. Here's the only sticking point. What about 6? What do you prefer, 3 or 6?
I mean, if it's uncontested, does it really matter? Other than the fact that we're paying poll workers to sit there.
Mm-hmm.
That does not get reimbursed by the state.
Yep.
I mean, if anything, if we don't want to agree on 3, I'd have no problem agreeing on 4 p.m. Giving them another hour, 6. I just personally think for uncontested, I do think 8 hours is too much.
Okay. Okay, so let's just try it on for size. All right. How about at any town election or special town election for which all, I guess I'd want to say every instead of all, but okay, for which every elective office is uncontested, the polls shall be open at 10 a.m. and remain open until 3 p.m. in the afternoon.
Could you read that one more time, Councilor Chase? Sorry.
Sure. So at any town election or special town election for which every elective office is uncontested, the polls shall be open at 10 a.m. We said it, yeah, 10 a.m. and shall remain open until 3 p.m.
I think that's fine. I would just say at the beginning, it should be any town election, period, right? We don't need special election in there, do we?
We don't. I mean, I think
it's less confusing if you remove the special town election part, just do all town elections.
Right.
okay, so
And-
what if we,
And as you're discussing it with the rest of the council and the public, make sure they understand this has nothing to do with any state or federal election.
Yeah.
This
Yeah,
is
you're-
only Bridgewater town election.
you're absolutely correct. We would certainly do that. So that the proposal is perhaps at any election, but I almost don't want to say any town election because then that raises the question, what about a special election? So I guess that's why I was originally saying at any town election, capital T, capital E, because it's a defined term in our charter, in our code, or special election, for which, not really comfortable with that, but I guess that's all I can really think of. At which, maybe it should be at which every elective office is uncontested. I don't think there's any, I mean, I think that's not ambiguous. I think that's straightforward.
I do think I agree with Paul. Just get rid of the special election. Just say any town election.
At any town election,
Shall be from 10 to 8, uncontested across the ballot, 10 to 3.
at any town election for which every elective office is uncontested, the polls shall be open at 10 a.m. and remain open until 3 p.m.
Yep, that sounds great.
I agree with that too. I don't really see people getting confused when they see that and think state or federal too, when it says any town. I get what you were trying to do with the special election too, but I do think that
Okay.
kind of covers it.
We just have to be sure to not, believe it or not, to not capitalize town election.
Election, yeah.
It's lowercase. We're talking about any election in the town,
Yes,
not just any town election.
agree.
Okay. So, I would,
Do you want to add the words local?
well, we could,
Local
but
town
I
election.
think, it's going to appear in our ordinance under elections, hours, section 1, annual town elections. So I think it's clear.
It's
Yeah,
clear to you and I.
No, okay, right. No, granted, I know. We're not talking about any state election. which is what a federal election is, if you get down to it. There really only are state elections.
Just one further quick question on the clarification. The way the amendment reads now, in the middle paragraph that I believe is the paragraph we're editing, at annual town elections polls, correct, Counselor Chase? That's the paragraph we're editing now, where it starts as written currently at annual town election polls.
Yes, that's correct.
That
At,
second sentence in there, I believe is worded differently than the first one. So the first sentence says polls shall be open at 10 o'clock in the morning. The second sentence says at special town elections or uncontested races, the polls may be open no earlier than 10 and remain open no later than 3.
okay,
Why is that language? Why is may?
okay, in my version, in my proposed amendment, I struck the word may
Mhm.
and I replaced it with shall. In other words, what my amendment said for that second sentence is, as it reads at the beginning of the evening, at special town elections, I deleted uncontested, the polls shall be open at 10 o'clock in the morning and remain open until 6 o'clock in the evening. Right.
When
so-
did you
so-
add 6 o'clock? You were talking about 3.
Well, right, but okay, what I'm reading is what I, at the beginning of our meeting, had.
Right.
Right, okay, we've since moved from 6 to 3.
So I would suggest the second sentence of this proposed ordinance say that at uncontested races, the polls shall be open, rather than talking about special town elections at all. Just strike out that special town elections.
Yeah, Tina, I guess my question is why does that second sentence as written say may be open no earlier than 10? And
This was actually written by Debbie, not me.
Okay,
oh, okay.
What I
Yeah.
had proposed was a little bit different than this. They tweaked this, and this is what they put together.
Okay, that's fine. I think we're answering the question anyways. It just seems like at the discretion of somebody, they can choose to open it anytime after 10 and close it anytime before 3, which we want to eliminate.
that's why I changed may to shall.
Yeah.
And I got rid of the no earlier than
Okay, we're all on the
Um,
same page.
and no later than. I took those out, those, permissive kinds of things. I took those out.
Okay.
It shall open and shall remain open until. So I think that answers that. And as to Tina, you had your recommendation you had just made that we just begin that sentence by saying any uncontested races.
Yes.
All right, so if we do that, then that second sentence would read, any uncontested races, or I guess during any, at any contest, for any uncontested races.
In the event,
In the event, yeah, we can always do in the event. All right, let's try it on for size. In the event,
of an uncontested race, or we have to specify all races. It can't just be one, like your example that you gave earlier.
right, so in the event, okay. In the event
That there are,
that all elected offices,
are uncontested.
right,
And then the polls shall be open from 10 o'clock in the morning and remain open until 3 in the afternoon.
okay, in the event that all elective offices are uncontested, the poll, that we pick it up, the polls shall be open at 10 a.m. and remain open until 3 p.m. We think we have it?
Yeah, I mean, do you want consistency? The 8 o'clock in the evening is in the first sentence. You want 3 o'clock in the afternoon, just for consistency?
It should be 3 o'clock in the, oh, I see what you're saying. Until 3 p.m. Right, it's duplicative, but okay, 3 p.m.
No,
Oh,
it says
3
3
o'clock,
o'clock. It says
3
8
o'clock.
o'clock and 3 o'clock. Yeah.
Yeah, 3 o'clock. In the afternoon.
But now as I'm looking at this, it says that the annual town election, which is really only once a year, the specials are the others. So maybe, do we now have to put that wording back in there, or is it understood that all town elections? Maybe
Well,
we
what
can
we-
just say, instead of at annual, just put all town elections shall be open. That way they can be special and not regular.
Okay. Well,
Because it sounds to me like you guys don't want to restrict the hours of a special election that might have a contest of interest.
well, that's kind of the point, I think, is that.
Okay, so why don't we reword that then, to say that all town elections,
Okay, all town elections.
comma, polls shall be open at 10 o'clock in the morning and shall remain open until 8 o'clock in the evening. And any uncontested race, the polls shall be open from 10 o'clock in the morning and remain open until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. That simplifies it. Hopefully it clarifies, gets rid of ambiguities.
Okay. Okay, so we'll begin with the word at. At all town elections, polls shall be open at 10 o'clock in the morning and remain open until, what do we say?
8 o'clock in the evening.
8 o'clock in the evening.
So we're really not changing that many words from what was
Right.
the original suggestion.
Yeah. And then it goes on, in the event, am I correct? In the event that all elective offices,
I mean, we can simplify the wording, just say any uncontested race or any uncontested ballots. I don't know exactly how we should say it, but just
see, if we say any uncontested race, that's one race out of 8.
correct.
And
How about in the event
contested
there are
ballots
no,
are a whole different
no
subject.
contested races? In the event there are no contested races,
in the event that,
there are no contested races,
which
the
is to
poll shall
say,
be open.
which is to say that all elected offices are,
Well, don't add more words than you need to, because then
No,
people get lost in the weeds.
the thing is, we all know what races are in the context of elections. But I don't think our code anywhere uses the word races. So it does use words like, offices.
Well, the original do I have the original ordinance? I think I do.
Yeah, the original ordinance,
Well, it didn't say anything about uncontested races because it was
well,
never
the
even an
original
option.
ordinance didn't touch on any of this, so it doesn't
Right.
say,
Right.
just ours. Okay.
I'm just looking to see what wording Rainham uses. Any suggestions, Paul or Brad, on how to say that?
I think we've got it. Well, I mean, again, if we use the example we had, in the event that all elective offices, that's what we're talking about here, are uncontested, the polls.
That
Uh,
sounds good. I think you
And
got
then,
it.
then we go back to, the regular line, the polls shall be open at 10 o'clock in the morning and remain open until 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Perfect. Thank you.
So I think my Zoom just froze for a good 30 seconds. What did we just come to conclusions with? Sorry.
Okay, I think we have a something here we could vote on. So I guess I'll make the motion that we revise the language in the proposed ordinance to read at annual, where did we pick this up now? At all town elections, polls shall be open at 10 o'clock in the morning and remain open until 8 o'clock in the evening. We're good with that.
Yeah.
In the event that all elective offices are uncontested, the polls, and then we just go back to the language, the polls shall be open at 10 o'clock in the morning and remain open until 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
I'd second that motion.
Okay. All right, well, okay, we have a second, so any last discussion? No? Okay, all right, Deb, can we vote on this?
I think I have it.
Okay.
Uh,
Want me to
Councilor
just go through it for the sake of,
Nope, I have it written down. I'm gonna send it to you in the morning to make sure.
okay,
But I do have it.
okay,
Councilor McKinnon,
Yes.
Councilor Murphy,
You're muted.
he's on mute.
Sorry, yes.
Councilor Murphy,
Yes,
and Councilor Chase.
oh, sorry, yes,
3 in favor, 0 opposed.
okay.
Now,
That,
do we
um,
need to make a motion to recommend for approval to the council as amended? That's
Correct.
the next step, correct?
I
Yep.
would second that. Okay. And can we vote on that?
Councilor Murphy,
Yes.
Councilor McKinnon,
Yes.
and Councilor Chase.
Yes,
3 in favor, 0 opposed.
good.
Thank you.
Tina, thank you for your help.
Have a good night.
You're
Tina.
welcome.
I think we worked our way
Appreciate it.
through it. Okay. We have one remaining item, and I think it's going to be quite quick for us. I should never say that, but we are looking at proposed ordinance DFY 25013, proposed amendment to Part 2 Administrative Code, Chapter 290, Article 1, Section 1, shade trees. And I think, as you're aware, there it is. The only change that is proposed, Councilor Perry brought this forward, is to change the language to, which currently refers to the elected town official, referring to the tree warden. It says tree warden, the elected town official responsible for implementing and enforcing state and town laws and policies regarding trees, subject to appeal to the hearings officer as herein provided. And changing that word elected to the reality, which is appointed. So it's simply, that is the only word that changes. And I think it is intended to reflect the reality. I think the town manager referred to this at our last meeting, that we have never had an election for a tree warden, and customarily that position would be an appointed position. Any thoughts or questions about this?
I have no problem with this at all. Tree warden's definitely needed in the town. It's been a little bit. I know we had a volunteer before, but definitely good to get this all solved out for the tree
Yep.
committee and for the town in general.
No, that's true. Yeah, okay. I agree with that. Paul, anything on concern to you? No?
Nothing additional, no? No,
Okay.
straightforward.
I would put forward a motion to make the reference change, changing the word elected to appointed. That is the only amendment, that's the full amendment. I would make that motion.
Before that, we do have someone with their hand raised. I don't know if we want to.
Well, I think we've set the precedent for at least the evening.
Yeah, I'll suspend the rules to. I'll make a motion to suspend the rules to allow Pat Neri to speak.
I'll
That's great,
second.
and I'll
Oh,
second that, and Paul, you sound favorable, I'm favorable, okay. I think we're in agreement. Pat, if that is you, would you care to,
Yes,
Make
and
comment?
thank you.
sure,
Could you read the rest of the language in that amendment?
sure. Well, the entire amendment, it's a couple of paragraphs. I did note the only change is in the word elected, which is being struck in favor of the word appointed.
Okay,
So it says, I'm not opposed to reading this, but in other words, there's a definition section, even though it's not headed with definitions. It says the following definition shall apply. Hazardous tree, and it defines it. Public tree defined. Public trade shade tree defined. Refers to Mass General Law, Chapter 87. And the last definition is tree warden. And it currently says the elected town official responsible for. And it's simply to replace the word elected with appointed. So that is the only change in the existing ordinance that's
okay.
proposed.
I thought there was something else in there that I was concerned about. But I guess you
If,
didn't.
well, maybe I can help.
Okay,
My recollection is that we previously, in a separate measure, we provided that the tree warden. Oh, am I thinking of a botanist or the tree warden? Remember that Mr. J-Man came forward and proposed, he was having difficulty.
I think you're thinking of the arborist.
The arborist.
Oh,
I think
right,
you're
right.
correct. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. There was
Okay.
something in that ordinance in the additional language that referred to, oh my goodness, I don't have it in front of me.
It was to allow someone who's not a resident in the
Resident.
town to serve in that capacity.
Okay,
But as Paul pointed out, that was for the arborist position.
right, yeah, I remember that. I'll have to look that up for another day. There was an additional question I had, and it referred to, I think, an appeal to someone in a different capacity, which we do not have. So I was concerned about that, but I guess we won't discuss that tonight.
Okay, yeah, I think it's not part of the section that's before us tonight. So
Okay,
really, we couldn't
all right.
contemplate it anyway.
Well,
but
thank
okay.
you. Thank you.
If something occurs to me, I'll let you know.
Thank you.
separately.
I'll look it up and send you a note.
Okay,
Thank
Very
you.
all right, thank you, Pat. Okay, so I think we were,
I'd second your motion that was put on the table before we voted for her.
okay, very good, okay. And so I think we're prepared to vote on the amendment to change the word elected to appointed. If you could help us, Deb?
Counselor Murphy,
Yes.
Counselor McKinnon,
Yes.
Counselor Chase.
Yes,
3 in favor, 0 opposed.
very good. There is nothing further on our agenda but to consider adjournment. So if someone would like to make a motion,
I'll make a motion for adjournment.
I'll second.
okay. And Deb, if we can have a roll call one more time.
Counsel McKinnon,
Yes, sorry. My Zoom is being weird.
Counsel Murphy,
Yes.
and Counselor Chase.
Yes,
3 in favor, 0 opposed.
thank you so much. And thank you, members, because we had a very productive, although lengthy meeting.
Good
But
meeting.
we got a lot done. That's good. Thanks so much. Have a great evening.
Have a good
You guys
night.
all have a good night. We'll see
Bye
you
all.
next
We'll
Tuesday.
see you then.